Are you a transitioning teacher hoping to get into corporate learning and development? Well, if you are in the right place. Hey, it's Jeff with yourlearningcareer.com. I have been in corporate learning and development for the past 25 plus years, and I know that there are a lot of really great teachers out there who are looking to make the switch. And to help you with that, I wanted to give you my perspective as someone who's been in corporate for a number of years. I want to share with you some of my experience, as well as I want to provide you with some resources, tips, and tricks. And speaking of resources, I've actually created for you a Jumpstart kit. I'm going to link to it in the description below. And by the way, it's absolutely free. So I want you to grab that and use that to help you make a very smooth transition into corporate. The first thing I want to talk about real quick is the job application process itself. It can be very difficult. It can be very discouraging because there are times where you'll just feel like you're getting rejected over and over again.
None shall pass.
You'll feel like all anyone wants to do is weed you out, and it can be very frustrating. It can be very discouraging. But I just want to let you know that it's not just you who experiences that. When I apply for jobs and with all of my background and all of my experience, guess what? I get rejected. I get ghosted. I get told, oh, we decided to go in a different direction. You know, all of that stuff has happened to me. So I feel your pain. I know how frustrating it can be. Don't let that stop you, because somewhere there will be a company who you will be the right fit for. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, when I look back at some of the rejections I got, I'm actually really glad because I ended up in a better place with a better fit. So that's the first thing I want to talk about, is just be prepared for frustration and some disappointment, but don't let that get in your way. Now, before you go jumping into that whole job search process, you first need to figure out what it is you want to do in corporate learning and development. You know, I see a lot of people post that they want to get into L&D, but they don't really know what they want to do. So that's your first step. You need to figure out, where do you want to go? What kind of role do you want? And I'd recommend starting with, well, what is it that you've loved about being a teacher? Because that can be a good way to maybe start guiding you into the direction you want to go. So for example, if I'm a teacher and what I really love is being up in front of the classroom and presenting, public speaking, seeing people's light bulbs go off, you know, when I cover certain concepts, well, then I would say, oh, you'd probably want to look at trainer positions, you know, corporate trainer or training facilitator, you know, things like that. Now, on the other hand, there might be some of you who are more like, no, you know, I'm not really big on being up in front of an audience. What I would prefer to do is maybe do the problem solving of what the training issue is, what a solution could be, and then maybe you love to be creative and you want to build training solutions, right? So in that case, then I'd say, well, maybe you want to look at instructional design. So those are just a couple of examples. But like I said, there are a lot of different directions you can go in learning and development. Once you have kind of figured out what you want to do, then your next thing is going to be to research it. You're going to need to really immerse yourself in whatever that job role is. So if you decide you want to be a trainer, for example, you need to start understanding what it is. Like, what does a corporate trainer do? You know, what is the day-to-day? What does it look like? You need to start to learn the lingo. You're going to need to talk the talk. You know, you're going to need to be able to talk about adult learning. You're going to need to talk about, you know, you might be asked about the ADDIE model. Now, one thing I would strongly recommend is, like, once you narrow it down, I would then start doing some job searches. Now, we're not applying for jobs yet, but go out and do a job search for instructional designer, or do a job search for training coordinator or trainer, you know, whatever. Because that's also going to start giving you a clue about, one, what that role does, and two, whether or not it really is the kind of role you want. That's going to help you. You're going to see some of the lingo. You're going to see tools that are required for you to learn or know about, things like that. So that's a big recommendation that I have, is start to look at those. Something else I highly recommend you do as you're researching these roles is to start networking. Now, I know that term terrifies me. When people tell me I have to network, I freeze up, because believe it or not, my natural inclination is to be an introvert. So I am terrified of any kind of like networking event and stuff like that, right? But let me share with you a couple of very friendly places that you can get started networking. The first one is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, if you're not familiar with it, it is a social networking platform. It's specifically for professionals, and it is a great way to start connecting with people in the learning and development field. And particularly, there are two groups I'm going to recommend to you. One is called Teaching, a Path to Learning and Development, and the other one is called From Teaching to Training. These are both groups that are specifically geared toward, guess who? Teachers transitioning into learning and development. And what I love about these groups is they are not only made up of people like you who are teachers looking to make the transition, but they are also filled with teachers who have already made the transition, so they can give you lots of advice. And then they are also made up of people like me. Like, I try to jump into these groups whenever I can and answer questions to give the corporate perspective. So you definitely want to check these out. I'm going to link to these groups here in the description. The other networking opportunity I recommend is a professional organization called the Association for Talent Development. This is a professional organization for learning and development professionals. Whether you're a trainer, instructional designer, e-learning developer, doesn't matter. It's for anyone who's involved in talent development, right? So most cities have a local chapter, so I definitely recommend you look and see if yours does. It's a great way to go and actually meet people in person. They usually have monthly meetings where there's a guest speaker. A lot of times they'll have local conferences, but it's a really great way to start meeting other learning and development professionals. Again, I'll have links to that. All right, so you know what you want to do. You have a good idea of what you want to do. You've started researching the role. You've started networking with other people who are in the role, so you can ask them questions and things like that. What else do you need to do? In conjunction with your research, the other thing I would start doing is identifying your skill gaps. Inevitably, there are going to be gaps between what you have done as a teacher and what you will be expected to do in your new corporate role. And you need to identify those as soon as possible so that you can start filling those gaps. Let me give you an example. So let's say I've decided I want to be a corporate trainer. So I'm out there, I'm asking questions on LinkedIn, I'm looking at job descriptions, and I realize that if I'm going to be a corporate trainer, I'm going to need to use PowerPoint. And I realize, as a teacher, I really didn't use PowerPoint a whole lot. Now, some of you, maybe you did. Great. But in this example, let's say I really didn't use PowerPoint a lot in my teaching job. So that is a skill gap. So, once you identify that gap, then the next thing you need to do is figure out, okay, how am I going to fill that gap? Now, the good news is there is so much information out there, regardless of whether it's PowerPoint that you need to get better at, or maybe some other software, or maybe it's a process, as you're studying instructional design and being an instructional designer, you realize, I don't know what ADDIE is. But there are all kinds of things. Now, I always start with the free stuff. You got Google, you got YouTube. I'll put links to some videos that I have. I would also look, some things like Udemy, Skillshare, LinkedIn Learning. they have some cheap classes like Udemy, for example. They run sales all the time. So you can take courses for like $12, not just take, like you own it. Like once you buy it, it's yours and you could take it whenever you want. And they have courses on just about everything. And then LinkedIn Learning can actually get free access to that through your public library. Oh, and another resource is, I mentioned this earlier, but it's the Teaching a Path to Learning and Development. They have a website and they have a ton of resources there. Now, something else that you're going to probably come across as you're doing your research and you're looking through different resources, you're probably going to come across various certificate programs, academies, boot camps, etc. I see it a lot with instructional design in particular. But you may wonder when you come across these, it's, oh my gosh, do I need to get a certificate? Or, oh, do I need to go to an academy or get a degree? And my short answer is no, you don't have to. And I have a video where I talk more about it. I'll link to it here. I also have an article I wrote and I'll link to that as well. If you find a particular, certificate or program that hits a lot of your needs, like you've identified XYZ skill gaps, and this particular program covers all of them, and you feel like by taking that program, you're going to be more prepared and more confident, then hey, sure, it might be well worth it to you. But from a corporate perspective, like, is that like a big thing that we're looking for on a resume? No. Not necessarily. I mean, what I want to know from the corporate perspective, I just want to know, can you do it? I want you to be able to show me, to prove to me that you can do this job. And whether you have Joe's Academy certificate or, something else, that doesn't make as much a difference. So I would say, again, if it's worth it to you and it's going to help you in your journey, then great. But otherwise, don't get too hung up on it. Okay, so you have identified the role that you are after. You have researched the role. You've done some networking. You've also identified your skill gaps and you've been working on filling in those gaps. So are you now ready to apply for jobs? Not just yet, because something else that you're going to need to do is update your resume. You've got to get your resume ready for a corporate position, because right now my guess is your resume, and understandably so, your resume is going to list out, all the schools you worked for and your teaching experience and the grades you taught, grade levels, all of that good stuff. Unfortunately, that doesn't tell me, as a corporate hiring manager, that doesn't tell me how you're going to do in this role. It doesn't tell me that you can teach adults. It doesn't tell me that you know the software that I need you to know. So you're going to want to work on that. Now, I'm not saying to obliterate all of your teaching experience, because obviously that's very relevant and you've got a lot of great skills that are going to be transferable into your new corporate role. But you do need to look at how it's organized and the keywords and all of that stuff. Now, to help you with this, I actually have a series of 3 videos. I'm going to link to them here so that you can check those out. The worksheet that I link to in those videos is actually included in the Jumpstart kit that I have here. So you don't need to re-download it. You'll already have it. But those I very much recommend you check out, because that's going to help you kind of think about how you want to restructure your resume. And then one more thing that I wanted to give you some support on is prepping for the interview, because guess what? If you have done all of these things that I have shown you, and if you've done it effectively, you're gonna start getting interviews. So you're gonna wanna be prepared. So I actually have created a set of videos. I'm gonna link to them here, but they cover different job roles and questions that you might hear when you're interviewing for those particular job roles. So you wanna check those out. I hope you are feeling more confident and excited about your new future role. Don't forget to download the free Jumpstart kit that I will link to in the description below. Also, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know where you are in your journey. Also, if you have any questions, just let me know. All right, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time.